A picture of a woman with a blonde braid, her eyes cold and hard. It was the blonde from the warehouse, but the name on the file wasn't hers. It was Emily Parker. She wasn't dead. She was working for Lucas. She was the one who had disappeared, the one who was a ghost. She was the one who had betrayed Michael. The truth is rarely a straight line. It's a tangled mess of lies, and sometimes the only way to find it is to get your hands dirty. Sandra felt a mix of relief and disgust. Emily Parker was alive. But she was a traitor. She was a killer. She was the one who had framed Michael. And she was working for Lucas. The package wasn't Emily Parker's life. It was a lie. They wanted Sandra to give them something to prove their lie. They wanted her to give them a ghost they could control. She closed the file, her mind racing. She had to get out of there. Now. She slipped out of the study, locked the door, and moved through the house with a newfound urgency. She was almost at the back door when she heard it. A cough, a man's voice. Lucas. He was awake. She froze, her heart in her throat. She heard footsteps, a heavy, deliberate sound coming from the bedroom. She saw a light switch on, a thin sliver of light spilling into the hallway. She had to move. Now. She slipped into a closet, pulling the door shut just as he walked past, a glass of water in his hand. She held her breath, her hand on the knife in her boot, her body coiled like a spring. She heard him go to the kitchen, the sound of the refrigerator door opening, the clink of a glass on a counter. She waited. She waited for a full 5 minutes, a lifetime of silence, until she heard him go back to his room, the light in the hallway going out again. She slipped out of the closet, her movements fluid and silent. She went to the back door, picked the lock again, and slipped outside. She ran, her feet pounding on the wet grass, her breath a ragged gasp. She scaled the fence, dropped into her car, and drove. She drove until she was back on the highway, the city lights of Houston a distant memory. She had the proof. She had the leverage. She had everything she needed. Her prepaid phone buzzed again, this time with a call. She answered. "Where are you?" The voice was the same, rough and calm. "I have the package," she said, her voice steady, confident. "Good. Meet us at the warehouse, the one with the red door. Come alone, and bring the package." She knew they were testing her. They knew she had been to the house. They were watching her. They were playing a game, and she was about to play it better. She drove to the warehouse, the flash drive in her pocket feeling like a weapon, not a weight. She was no longer a pawn. She was a player. She was no longer running. She was hunting, and she was coming for them all. Part 4. The moment you stop being afraid is the moment you become truly dangerous. Fear is a leash, and Sandra had just chewed hers clean through. Sandra pulled up to the warehouse, the red door a stark, brutal slash against the gray concrete. She parked her car, the engine idling for a moment before she cut the power. The air was thick with the scent of rust and oil, a familiar, unwelcome perfume. She walked to the red door, her boots clicking softly on the asphalt, each step a note in a song of retribution. She was no longer a frightened detective. She was a force of nature, and she was coming for them all. She knocked on the red door once, a single sharp rap that echoed in the silence. The door opened, not with the blonde, but with Lucas himself. His face was a mask of cold, controlled fury. His eyes, the ones that had always held a dangerous smile, were now a cold, dead gray. "You're late," he said, his voice a low growl. "I had to make sure the package was secure," she replied, her voice steady, her eyes locked on his. He stepped aside, a motion of contempt. She walked in, the red door slamming shut behind her with a final, echoing clang. The air inside was thick with cigarette smoke and the heavy silence of a trap. The suited man was there, sitting at the same folding table, his face a still, practiced mask of control. The blonde, Emily Parker, was standing beside him, her braid a tight, punishing coil, her eyes a cold, hard blue. And Michael. He was sitting in a chair, his wrists and ankles bound with duct tape, his face bruised and swollen. But his eyes were open, a spark of defiance still burning in them. Sandra's heart ached at the sight of him, but she didn't let it show. She kept her face a blank mask, her eyes a cold, steady flame. She walked to the table and stood, facing them all. "The package," the suited man said, his voice a low command. Sandra took the flash drive from her pocket, not the one with the sealed file, but a different one, a new one, a weapon. She held it up, a single small piece of metal. "I have it. But I need to know he's safe first," she said, her voice a steel-sharp edge. Lucas chuckled, a low, ugly sound. "The girl has spunk. Untie him." Emily Parker moved forward, a knife in her hand. She cut the duct tape from Michael's wrists and ankles, her movements quick and efficient. Michael stood, a little wobbly at first, but his eyes never left Sandra's. "Now, the package," the suited man said, a cruel, cold smile on his face. Sandra looked at him, then at Lucas, and then at Emily Parker. "You want a ghost? I have a ghost, and she's a killer." She slid the flash drive across the table, not to the suited man, but to Emily Parker. Emily's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of surprise in their cold depths. She took the flash drive, her fingers a blur of motion as she plugged it into a small portable computer. The computer screen lit up, but not with the sealed file. It lit up with a single video file. A video of Emily Parker, not a ghost, but a killer. A video of her, with Lucas, in the same warehouse, framing Michael. A video that showed her taking the sealed file from the evidence locker. A video that showed her, with a gun in her hand, talking about a plan to kill Michael. It was all there. A smoking gun. A perfect digital confession. The air in the room went still, a sudden brutal silence. Lucas's face, the mask of cold fury, cracked. The suited man's mask of control shattered. Emily Parker's cold, hard eyes filled with a sudden, terrible fear. She looked at Sandra, not with hatred, but with a raw, primal terror. "You're dead," Lucas hissed, his voice a low, furious whisper. "You're all dead." He reached for a gun, a Glock 19, the same model as Sandra's service pistol, but he was too late. Michael, with a sudden animalistic roar, slammed into him, a blur of motion. The two men went down, a tangle of arms and legs, a chaos of sound and fury. Sandra, in that split second of chaos, moved. She grabbed the suited man's gun, a small, sleek pistol, and pointed it at Emily Parker. "Get on the ground," she said, her voice a calm, steady command. Emily Parker, a killer, a ghost, a woman with a cold, hard heart, fell to her knees, her hands in the air. The terror in her eyes was a raw, naked thing. Michael, bruised and battered, stood over Lucas, a triumphant, brutal light in his eyes. He had won. He had survived. And he had come back to life. The suited man, his face a mask of furious contempt, grabbed a cell phone from his pocket, a cheap, prepaid burner phone, and started to make a call. "It's over," Sandra said, her voice calm, her gun steady. "The police are on their way." He looked at her, then at Michael, a flicker of a cold, ugly smile on his face. "You've won a battle, detective, but the war is just beginning." He pressed a button on the phone, and a sudden violent explosion rocked the warehouse, the corrugated steel walls groaning and groaning, the air filling with a cloud of dust and debris. A section of the wall collapsed, revealing a hidden door, a small dark opening in the wall. The suited man, with a final mocking smile, disappeared into the darkness. Sandra and Michael, in a split second of shared instinct, ran. They ran to the hidden door, to the darkness, to the unknown. They ran into the darkness, leaving the collapsed warehouse behind them, leaving the past behind them, leaving the lie behind them. They were running from the devil, but they were running together. They were a man who had lost his life and a woman who had lost her soul. They were two people, a detective and a prisoner, a victim and a survivor, who had been tangled together by a lie. They had escaped the prison, but they were not free. The war was just beginning, and they were in it together. If this story meet your interest, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below and tell me about a time someone saw your worth when others didn't, or about a time you chose to see someone else's value when the world told you to look away. Subscribe for more stories that will challenge your assumptions, touch your heart, and remind you that the most powerful force in the universe isn't money or fame or success. It's love. It's courage. It's the decision to treat every person you meet as if they might be the hero of their own incredible story.